The Weeknd's final album. Yeah, this is it apparently. This is the final album under the name The Weeknd. Lots of artists do say they're retiring and then come back, so we don't know for sure, for definite, that this is the last one. But something about the album feels very definitive and final to my ears when I hear it, and the music and how cinematic it feels, how end of the world it kind of all feels, how much of a finale it really does feel. It could just be a coincidence that it is the third in the trilogy, so this is the final album of the trilogy, which is why it sounds that way. But I don't know, man, something about this one makes me believe that The Weeknd isn't lying when he says this is the final one under that name. So it's sad to see, because I do think The Weeknd's been one of the best pop artists of the past 15 years without a doubt. I think he's been fantastic. I don't think all of his albums are great. I don't think all of his albums were, smash hits. But even when he was dropping a bit of a weaker album, he always had a great song on it, at least one, at least two, maybe three, honestly. He's a very consistent artist. He is super influential to the R&B sound of the early 2010s as well, but then managed to completely transform that sound into more of like a synth pop sound that worked so well for him and gave him some of his biggest songs and biggest moments, like with After Hours. I think the guy is really deserving of this success. I think he's fantastic. I think he's very much a one-of-a-kind pop artist in our generation, and it's sad to see that this could be the final one. As for the trilogy so far, I mean, yeah, obviously, based on what I just said, I think that's been really good too. I think After Hours is good. I think it's an album that was trying to blend some of his old style with this newer synth pop sound, and I don't know if it fully nailed that kind of combination of sounds, but overall I still think it's good. And then I think Dawn FM was really just where he kind of went all out pop, and I think that was what we've been kind of looking for from The Weeknd for a long time. He's kind of been flirting, but he's always held that old sound intact, but Dawn FM just kind of let go of that and had a pretty interesting concept attached to it as well. But for me, that's the one from this trilogy. Even after Hurry Up Tomorrow is out now, I'm still feeling that way too, without, spoiling the entire review. But I do think that is the one. And out of all of his albums, I think it's his best one. Obviously discounting the mixtapes, because I think House of Balloons is his best mixtape. But I think Dawn FM is the best album that he's put out for sure. Hurry Up Tomorrow was a bit of a worrying one for me on first listen. In fact, I went pretty much straight to Twitter when I heard it and basically just said it was super underwhelming. But this is why you listen to albums more than once, because if I'd just given you a review right off the back of that listen, I mean, it'd be like pretty mostly negative. But it's grown on me, I will say that. I've grown to appreciate it more than I did when it first came out. And with more listens, I have become more accustomed to that really atmospheric and, again, cinematic, really like cloudy feeling that you get listening to this album. Will I say that the album is perfect from start to end? Definitely not, no. But I at least now appreciate a lot more of what he was going for here, and I think for what it's attempting to achieve, it pretty much achieves it. This album feels very Endgame, as I've already said, very much that like kind of final moment. You're coming to terms with where you've been, where you've come from, and how you've ended up as a superstar in the world of pop music, and kind of just now seeing where you go from here, reflecting on things, wanting to kind of go back home and just take it all home with you and just call it a day. And yeah, I think the album's overall feel gives off that throughout brilliantly, to be honest. Like, I think it gives off that feeling really, really well. Does it always make for great songs or enjoyable songs? Not necessarily, but I think the feeling that it conveys is very impressive and achieves, like I say, what it is trying to set out to do. But it just starts off with an absolute banger. We got to talk about that straight away. I mean, Wake Me Up, man. Wake Me Up. What a stunner of a produced track this is. And then you look at the production credits and you see Justice's name. And you just think Justice never missed once, did they? Justice never missed once. And I love the fact that The Weeknd is trying to collect all the French house bands and make them his own. He's already done tracks with Daft Punk and he killed those ones too. And now he's chasing Justice. and making another hit, man. This is a great opening track. Love the synth splashes as well. I think it's great. Unfortunately, there are no more Justice collaborations on this album. I would have loved to have seen more. I would have loved that, but unfortunately, we kind of get a lot of familiar faces popping up on this album. Mike Dean, who's collaborated a lot with The Weeknd a lot throughout the years, of course, he's kind of taking the reins a lot on these tracks. But yeah, I would love to have seen more Justice. But anyway, we do get Metro Boomin on the next track with Cry For Me, which I am very impressed with how Latin this track sounds. The drums have this really cool Latin flavour to them. Never really heard a drum beat like this from Metro. Metro has a very distinct sound, but I've got to say to him here, I wasn't so like, oh wow, this is so obviously Metro when I heard it. I was very surprised to hear that kind of kick to it that gave it that really odd Latin flavour. I think with the song itself, I think it's good. I enjoy it, but it feels very familiar for The Weeknd for me. Like, I feel like we've had lyrics like this before. The die for me, the cry for me, those repeated phrases have kind of popped up in similar ways across The Weeknd's catalogue. So I kind of feel like I'm not too enamoured with this track maybe as other people are. I do think it's still enjoyable. But yeah, I mean, like, come on, we kind of are repeating things we've already heard before, really. Sao Paulo, not really a track I enjoyed when I heard it out of context of the album. Didn't even think it would make the album because, as we've seen, Dancing in the Flames hasn't made it on at all. And Sao Paulo just felt like a track that was just a loosey single that didn't really have any kind of like attachment to anything. But when you kind of flow from the previous track into this one, it does really work. I mean, again, it just kind of like up levels that Latin flavour from the previous song that pops up randomly and just takes it even further. And yeah, I quite like this track as well in context with the album now. I think it's kind of fun. Niagara Falls has these nice little details in the production that prickle your ears as well, and has this kind of like pitched up vocal as well on the refrain, which sounds pretty cool. You've also got Timeless, which was a single from this album, which I really enjoy the production there. It kind of sounds very like sci-fi, kind of sounds like, you know, something that you're going to find in like some kind of like Star Wars battle, but if you for some reason had The Weeknd and Playboi Carti there or something, just something kind of sounds like lasery in the beat. I find really cool, like laser gun sounds, even though they're not, but they kind of mimic that as well. But yeah, I like how this song combines the synth sounds of The Weeknd's recent stuff with like the Playboi Carti isms that pop up as well, and it just merges in a way that I just can't really understand how it ends up working, but it really does. Like, it really does work. But yeah, super catchy song, super melodic. Like, it's really hard not to finish this album and then have this one song in my head by the end. Each time I've listened to this album, this has been the song at the end of it that's still stuck in my head. It's not even actually my favourite track, which I'll get to soon, but yeah, it ends up being the one in my head. It's a really weird thing, because this is like halfway through the track list, and bloody hell, there's a lot of tracks. So, you know, you're getting like past 10 more songs beyond this one, and yet somehow this is the one that's imprinted in my brain. Don't know what they were cooking up in this song, but there's something really addictive about it, and you can very much clearly understand why this song is like so massively took off in the streams. Like, still to this day, even though it's been out months, it's getting like 30 million streams a week or something like that. Like, I can very obviously see why. And I did just allude to it there with my point about how many tracks there are on this album, but it's pretty important to note, and I know I'm pretty far into this review now, but I do have to point out the elephant in the room, that this is an hour and 25 minutes. I love The Weeknd, as I've already said. I think he's great, but I, as big of a fan of as I am, don't think I ever need an hour and 25 minutes of him in one sitting. And it's not a double album either, so it's not like he's structured it in the sense that, like, you know, you could stop at a point and then play the rest later. I mean, you could do that with any album anyway, but the point is that it is just a one sitting long 22 track album that doesn't have like a breaking point to split up the concept or anything like that. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't. So yeah, I love the guy. I just don't need it to be this long. I really don't. I mean, do you? Be honest with yourself. Do you? Does every track feel like it has to be here? Because I don't know if it does by the end. Some of the duds actually come in the collaborations, which is really sad to see, because I was very much looking forward to seeing what we'd get from the Travis Scott collaboration, and also Florence and the Machine is on this track too. But having heard it, I kind of could do without it, honestly, because I think the first portion of the track is building up a nice atmosphere. The production is very thin though, so it doesn't have a lot to play with, but it does build up an interesting atmosphere. And then by the point of like, what, 2-ish minutes, Travis Scott just comes in with this like really odd voice that he's never played with before. And look, I've said this about Playboi Carti too, like, guys, Travis, Carti, both of you need to stop this deep voice thing. You know, you play to your strengths. I'm okay with artists being versatile, trying new things, you know, dilly-dallying around in new sounds. I'm okay with it. But when you try something that doesn't work, just leave it there. We don't need this ever again. I'm sorry, Travis, but this just did not work. Also, the Future track, which The Weeknd and Future have collaborated a lot before and often come through with some good collaborations. Not really here for this one either. And I would probably say that The Abyss is the starting point of where the album kind of just begins to blend together quite a bit. And sadly, as much as, again, I do like Lana Del Rey, I don't feel like her vocal contributions here bring a huge amount to the table. And you know what? You know something weird? Before they collaborated for the first time on Behind the Madness, it was one of those things where it was like, these two could come together and sound amazing. And they've done a lot of collaborations now, and I've got to say, something doesn't gel here. Like, they should work, but I don't think they've ever come through with a collab where afterwards I've been like, that's amazing. I've just never felt it. I've never felt it. Even though they should match perfectly. Their voices should intertwine, their styles, their lyrics as well. Like, something about the way that they both create music should match. And I just don't hear it every time they come through. I don't hear it. I don't think it ever works. And this, to me, it's just boring. And that last leg, like I say, just from that point on, something about the album just really starts to lose steam and just blends together. And the sound of the album just loses it a bit for me. The kind of like originality is gone too, because it kind of feels like, again, this could be intentional, but it kind of feels like the album's coming full circle back into like the original trilogy sound, and maybe that's what he was trying to go for, to end the album on that. And it kind of, again, like comes full circle, because the final track does transition nicely into the very first song on House of Balloons, which is a pretty cool little Easter egg that I thought was impressive to throw in there. And I don't know if he's done that on purpose, where like the last few songs do kind of start to merge into that old sound, but yet they don't have that like star power that House of Balloons did, really. They just kind of sound like throwaways, filler tracks. I hate using that term. I think it's a bit of a lazy thing for a reviewer to say, or a critic, if you want to call me that, but they do really sound like filler to me. I just think we don't need this album to be this long. Apart from Give Me Mercy, which randomly just sounds like it could be inserted into a feel-good moment from a Disney movie, like honestly, throw this into like The Lion King in a feel-good moment. That chorus would fit. I promise you. Hear it, imagine it, and then come back and tell me I'm wrong. I promise you, I need people to jump on this, man. I need people to agree with me, because something about it really sounds very much like that. But yeah, that's not to say this is all bad. I'm not trying to get massively negative about the album, because I do think it's good. But when you've got 22 tracks and, you know, like a good portion of them feel like they're just not really doing a huge amount for you, you kind of have to address it. That's not to say the entire album is a throwaway because of that, but yeah, I just have to mention that this portion of tracks I could do without. But then, you know, you take those away and you've still probably got like 14 good ones. So it's a weird ratio at the end of the day. Like, you're still talking about a relatively good album, I guess, in that sense. Music isn't maths, but I'm sure you get what I mean. Now, after that run of slight negativity there, I do have to highlight the best track on the album, man. I have to do it. Open Hearts, are you kidding? That production is fantastic. The rumbling bass groove is magnetic. It sucks you in immediately. It's just pummels and it sounds amazing. The friggin' synth splatters on the chorus shatter, and oh, it's an incredible sound. Wow. And guess what? Looked at the production credits. Who's on it? No other than Max Martin, the guy. Max Martin, The Weeknd, one of the best duos. Name a better duo, seriously. That is an incredible duo. Every time they come together, they produce amazing music, and it's just a match made in heaven. Max and The Weeknd, don't miss. That's who produced most of Dawn FM, and it worked really brilliantly. So yeah, it makes so much sense to me that this is a Max Martin track. Actually, weirdly, it kind of has like a bit of a vibe that everything would conjure up. Maybe on their Raw Data Feel album. I don't know, man. Something about this track just reminded me of them. I don't know how, and I don't know why we've ended up here, but that's just how I felt. But yeah, love this track. What a track this is, man. Love it. I do also want to mention 2 tracks that I really like from this album as well, where The Weeknd is pining for his return to home. I can't wait to get there and Take Me Back to LA. Take Me Back to LA is a funny title, actually, because, you know, when we had After Hours with the escape from LA, now he's like kind of itching to return, and he's got these lyrics as well where he's talking about how like he just wants to be back home. He doesn't want to really be where he is anymore. He can't wait to make it. Can't wait to make it home. Very kind of general observations here. I know I'm not exactly saying anything like, whoa, you didn't pick that out, did you? Like, these are pretty obvious if you listen to the lyrics. But yeah, I think it's interesting here. I think that kind of feeds into the overall concept as well, where he's just kind of wanting to just escape the life he's living now and just make it back to where he once, you know, was, or a place that he loves, really. Yeah, I think it's an interesting element to the album. And of course, Hurry Up Tomorrow closing out the album as well, where he's kind of like just apologizing and wanting to change, is almost as if like it's time for this, you know, persona to kind of come to an end now, and it's time to return to where he once was. Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty interesting stuff. Not really the kind of lyrics you'd ever get on a mainstream pop album, if you think about it. Like, you don't really get lyrics like this. Like, say what you will about The Weeknd, I'm not saying he's like an all-time great writer or anything like that, but for a mainstream pop artist, like, where are you getting this type of writing? There isn't this kind of like, you know, reflectiveness, this, you know, pining to return home in such a detailed way. Like, it's a pretty cool thing to be hearing on a massive mainstream pop album. But anyway, I think overall I've kind of summed up my overall thoughts here. I think it's a good album. I do. I think it's got interesting lyrical ideas, as I've highlighted throughout this review, of course. Some amazing synth production as well. I even saw some people saying like they're sick of The Weeknd doing synth music, and it's like, what? Like, how? Why are you sick of this? This is good. This sounds good. This is good, okay? Like, we got the alternative R&B stuff, the dark, broody stuff for most of the 2010s. Let him try something different. Like, he's only been doing this for a few albums. Like, what gives? What gives? What gives? Anyway, yeah, lots of great production. A really cool kind of climax, I would say, to a trilogy here as well. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's a cool kind of finale endgame moment that we're getting, and I like it. It just runs on too long. Some of the tracks blend together. Some of the tracks just aren't even that good to begin with. I just would absolutely cut a lot of this fat, because for me, it lands at like a 6 out of 10. I think it could have been much better if he hadn't just padded out the track list to this insane length. I at least understand it, because I think, you know, he wanted to end on this kind of note and end with a bang. But yeah, it just doesn't make for great music the whole way through. But shout out to The Weeknd, man. I mean, he's been pretty fantastic for a long time now. If this is the final album, yeah, I'll be sad to see him go. But what a run. What a run. Thank you for watching this review. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you have some interesting things to say about what I've said in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. If you agree with me, disagree with me, I'd love to see why. And that's it from me. We'll leave it there. Subscribe for more videos as well. Check out my Patreon if you're feeling really generous, if you like what I'm doing. It will help me support, you know, these videos and keep them going for as long as I can. Would love that. But at the very least, like the video, share it around, and yeah. What's your favourite song on the album? What's your favourite Weeknd album? Have a good day, and goodbye.